No, we just lost 3 people. Go now. Hey guys, welcome to Wood Live. Welcome to the Wood Shop. It's been a minute for me since I missed last time. I was I don't know. I think I missed the memo. You guys didn't like my performance. I don't know what happened.
You nearly missed the memo today.
Yeah, I nearly missed the memo today too. But anyway, welcome back. John and I have got some cool stuff to show you today for the new issue that's coming out, or is actually on the newsstands now, correct? And I do believe Dave's going to talk about some tools. And yeah, so the new issue.
That's what you're looking for?
Somebody might have that in their mailbox now, exactly. So a lot of cool stuff in here. And some good shop projects. And good gift kind of projects. And some pretty good sized furniture stuff too. So a lot of stuff. Microphone's not on, I guess. So anyway, going to get started?
Do I?
Yeah.
No.
Well, why don't you start anyway?
First thing we're just setting up right now is a miter gauge shooting board. So this is kind of an interesting concept for a project. What you're using is the miter gauge that comes with your table saw that you usually throw away. Now you have a use for it. So, was that too much? Was that too much?
No, you know what? They are getting better. I would say that there's companies who are trying to make improvements on these things.
But the concept is you can use this to build a platform that you can guide a plane on its side, and that's how you are shaving miters. So in this instance, let's say we need something a little off of 45. You can make those small incremental adjustments, lock it in place, get your board in there, and shoot the miter. Make those adjustments. So I was trying to set this up real quick. We almost forgot that this was in this issue, but maybe if I wrangle it a little bit, we can show it before we leave today.
And I'm trying to remember too. Was this a reader?
I don't know if it was a reader or if it was a really good idea off the internet.
Was this Randy? Yeah. So Randy Maxey, Randy Maxey, one of our contributors, had this came up with this idea
of doing this.
And he's the first person in time to ever come up with a shooting board.
A shooting board?
Yeah, he's the very first person to do it. He invented the shooting board.
Invented the shooting board?
So anyway, he's got a patent on this. So don't be going out there trying to make these for sale. I'm just warning you.
Well, we better put this away then.
No, I tell you what. So in all seriousness, shooting boards are a really cool thing. And before John arrived at Wood Magazine, I wasn't really a person who used a lot of shooting boards, but I said once he got here and I started using hand tools a little bit more, they're very handy for really fine-tuning joints. And it's you can't just always go back to your table saw and nibble off a little bit, because usually what happens is you nibble off just a little too much. It's a very controlled way of doing that. What's cool about this is the adjustability. We did do an adjustable shooting board, but basically taking something out of your shop that you already have, you can drop it in, and it's any angle you want. So that's it's a really cool shop project.
Well, and I know you have a lot of shooting boards that are like block plane size.
Yeah.
So Kevin has shooting boards, they're maybe a foot square.
Yep.
So
I haven't graduated to the big boy stuff
well,
yet. Yeah. Keep it small.
Keep it.
One of these days. One of these days. No, I mean, I think, and you obviously can make these, any size you want to fit your needs, but the adjustability is really I think the really key component with this that we really thought was pretty cool. So kudos to Randy. Thanks for sending that in to us, sharing. Checks in the mail.
Checks.
Maybe not.
Well, Randy does all the shop.
Yeah, Randy does all the shop tips, and Randy does all the Your Shops, which is a plug for that part of the magazine. Please send us shop tips, and if you want to have your shop featured in Wood Magazine, send us some pictures of your shop to woodmagazine.com. Attention, Randy.
Attention, Rand. I'll look it up. You keep talking.
Anyway, we're always looking for great shop ideas to feature your shop in the magazine. I think everybody gets a real kick out of that, seeing other people's shops and seeing how they kind of work with the spaces that they have, because not everybody is got a 40 by 60 building to work with, and they just kind of make do with what they've got at home. And I think that's the thing I think is probably the most interesting part about it. So
Yeah, this month the shop is 12 by 12
yeah,
with one corner cut out.
yeah.
So what are you talking, 130 square feet maybe?
As long as you're not building kitchen cabinets for a big house, you're fine.
They want to send it to woodmail at woodmagazine.
Woodmail at woodmagazine.com. Okay.
So
Great. I see you have kind of another technique-y thing here that you have in front of you. Do you want to talk about your
This
breadboard
is a project that we disguised as a technique. You end up with a cutting board, but what we wanted to talk about was the breadboard ends. So this is one I got together. This is one still in progress. And if you want to get people fired up on the internet, start putting breadboard ends together.
Well, we're going to get some people fired up today.
Oh yeah. So even on this sample, because I mean this was shot like 3 months ago or more. I've had it in the to-do pile, and I don't know if you can see on the top, just sitting. This one's never been finished. We've had quite a bit of wood movement on this, where this breadboard end is sitting proud on this side, and when I flip it over, maybe a little harder to see, but these corners are sitting proud. So the concept is we have wood grain going in two directions, and they're perpendicular to one another, and it's going to move no matter what you do. It's going to want to move a little bit on you. So the concept with the breadboard end is if you take this off and just have a flat panel like this, it could curl, cup, twist, whatever. We want to control how it moves a little bit on the end so that we have a nice flat board like this. So cut a tenon, and then these are just open on the end, so we just cut a through groove. The next step up would be to cut this away and do a blind groove where you can't see it. But what we're doing on this in this technique is we're going to pin the center tight so this doesn't move at all. And then on the outer ones, there is a hole here and a hole here, but then on the inside there's actually a slot. And that allows this board to expand and contract and not crack, break.
Somewhat
Yeah.
controlled manner.
Yeah, you're controlling it, but you're letting it do what it wants to do naturally. So this particular one has just a little bit of glue in the middle and is pinned, and then the outside will move. I trimmed it, and actually summer's coming. You can kind of feel we're maybe a 64th. So this will continue to grow with time. And actually we had in Lucas's, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say.
In Lucas's editor's
I think
annal.
that's the one time I actually read this. No, I didn't read it. I just looked at the picture. I saw the picture. So yeah, the workbench. Is this yours or mine?
That's John's.
That's probably mine.
Yeah. So, this is just how things go, and I think one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this up is there's a lot of myths on the YouTube out there. There's some YouTube people who, think if I can, put dominoes in all the way across there and glue it, that I'm going to defeat this, and you're not. So what's going to end up happening when you do that is the field of wherever you do that and glue that, you're going to end up with splits all across that panel. It's going to break it. I mean, this may not break, but this panel will break, and it won't necessarily break at a glue joint, but it's going to find the weakest grain it can, and it's going to separate.
Relieve the pressure. Because our big workbenches upstairs are 33 to 36 inches wide, and they'll expand and contract about a 1/4 inch between winter and summer. And so, it's not that much on a 12-inch board, but you can imagine these folks building farmhouse tables out of wood that isn't dry in the first place.
Right.
Lock it all in place, and there's a reason you don't see a photo from 2 to 5 years
Right,
after it's
another
built.
thing
So-
too with this, not to go too deep on this, but these are flat sawn. This is flat sawn lumber, rift, or quarter sawn lumber would if you're doing a big top, might be a better choice because it will minimize a little bit of that movement over the seasons. But it's still going to move, but it does minimize that. But,
Yeah. So it's just a little technique article on getting you started and kind of going down this path. And again, you can experiment with whatever and you end up with a little project at the end.
You end up with a cutting board, you can end up with a tabletop. It's the technique is the same.
This actually started as a tabletop. And
The sanding process.
Between the sanding and
kind of took it down a little bit. So
you practice a joint, cut it off, cut it. So, yeah, this.
That never happens here.
Yeah, this actually sat 8 at one point. So.
All right.
Do you want to?
Moving on. Well, we do have a couple projects that we weren't willing to haul down here. We're sorry about that. The big projects in this issue, the kind of our biggest furniture piece there, the cherry sideboard. I think we planned on doing this almost a year and a half ago, to kind of, and I'm sorry about this, but it's a companion piece to the cherry corner cabinet that we did
2 years ago.
2 or 3,
Probably says it.
4. Yeah, probably says in there.
Read the article.
But we're not reading
We're
that.
not reading. But anyway, it's a really cool piece to complement that. If you didn't build the corner cabinet, maybe you can go back and do that. Just a nice little sideboard, simple. Lots of nice drawer storage and some glass doors to display kind of some of your favorite serving pieces. So perfect for the dining room. And then you did.
Well, the other
Nice
one,
little picnic table.
we have a picnic table coming up on, well, summer here almost. We wanted to do a more modern one, so incorporated some angles. The base on this is, it is mitered, and all those joints are connected with Craig screws. So they're the XL
outdoor
for 2x stock. So all the legs are, it's basically 2 laminations. So within this, you have an outer lamination and an inner lamination. It's all Craig jointed, and then those are put together, and all the holes for the screw heads are hidden. So my only advice on this is if you want to build it, get the plan, because if you do not have these drawings, this will hurt.
Yeah, it's not hard. It's not hard. Just it's just not 45 degrees or 90 degree angle. So
it's a lot of 20s, and
yeah,
not that I have bad memories, but yeah, it's just
fun project. And you know, ironically, I mean, we just had a meeting this morning. Yesterday about outdoor stuff for next summer. So we're actually starting to, because that was photographed last
October.
Okay, it was almost summer. But we're trying to do a little bit better. We're trying to get those summer projects done a little bit earlier for our art director.
The grass was green.
The grass was green.
Look at that grass.
It may have been snowing the day before, but yeah. So we work. That's how far out we're working. We're working about a year out on some of these projects, and just so we can get the photography right. But we're actually working on 4 new projects for next year, and they're all super top secret.
Super
Top secret. So, yeah. So we had. Do you want to talk about your tool thing, or do you want to talk about the sock leg table?
Well, if I do the tool thing, I can go home.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So this is I think it was called transformable tool stand, and I have 2 of these units stacked right now. The base unit is just about the right size for any benchtop tool. I think we're going to actually trade out our little spindle sander here in the shop and put that on one of these bases. They stack as well, so if you wanted to, we don't have these connected, but you could stack these up into a rolling tool cabinet. And in the article, we actually did link 2 of them together with like a low bench top, so it's like an assembly table, short bench. The base unit is just a shelf. So if you buy a sheet of plywood and some 2x stock, you can make the base unit with a shelf. You need a bit more wood to do pull-out drawers. So in this instance, we did a drawer up and a drawer down. So this would be if you had whatever, you have your accessories here. And then these drawers I wanted to do for these kind of sustainers. So you can pull it out, actually open the the box that you want to use, put it back in. We got some drawer slides that are a little bit angry, so they'll take your finger off. So that's fun.
Soft close.
Not soft close, it's kind of an angry close. So they're childproof. But yeah, so yeah, that's just each cube is, it is about a sheet of plywood, because what I wanted to do on this was make it heavy enough that there's some mass to the base, so if you put whatever tool on there, you don't have to worry about it tipping over or running away on you, kind of thing. So.
And before anybody writes in, if you're going to stack these up, then screw them together, and no, it's not something you use to climb on. So, yeah.
Second time.
And don't open all the drawers at one time.
I think you can open that. Okay, I'll let that go. I'll let that go. Kevin is having bad flashbacks.
No.
So.
No, not at all.
So anyway, yeah, a little tool stand.
No, I think it's a versatile piece that, allows you to kind of, it's a modular. So, hey, I don't need, a tower. I just need a longer work surface. And I think did you do one that had kind of a work surface? Top that went over the top?
Because,
yeah,
we did a couple more on wheels. And is that, how many pages was this article? You can kind of see it in the background there. We have one tool stand in the front, and then we have one in the back with a kind of a workbench top.
Yeah.
So I think it was 2 feet wide, about 6 feet long.
Yep.
So, yep.
Yeah, so cool project. We'll just bring this sock leg table up here on the bench so we can see it. Might not be the greatest angle, but this was kind of a project that came about, another, project that was a project that was developed from a technique that we wanted to do. So the technique was doing these socks, and this, in the woodworking world, this is called a sock leg, and there's multiple ways of doing this. From the research that I did, a lot of other magazines have done this that I'd seen, had used veneer to create that look, which is also a very cool technique. Being a little different, I decided we would want to do this with solid wood. So these are not a solid piece of ash, but they're actually a thicker piece of veneer that actually gets attached to the leg. It's mitered at the corners, and then the leg is actually tapered after the fact. So there's still material left over at the end. And I don't know, you zoom in on that a little bit, Lucas, where you can actually see the bottom of that. So I'm thinking we started with 3/16 or 5/16 inch material. I can't remember which one it is, but it's thicker stock, and basically what it allowed you to do is have material to taper that off. And then for a variation of that, this leg was done in a similar fashion. However, you've noticed the top of that sock is actually curved. So to do that, we actually used a Forstner bit to drill down on each side of that leg and then remove the rest of the material with a dado set, which is how I created the tenon, if you will, for the socks. Fun technique, kind of create a bunch of different looks. We could have gone all day with this, where you could have this, you could have big high tube socks with stripes in it. I mean, you could get crazy with this. Put a little pieces of veneer in here and create some stripes. It's one of those things where giving you the basis of how to do this, but your creativity, I'd love to see people try this out. I mean, it's a simple table, elegant, fits in about any decor, but this technique is kind of was fun. I actually enjoyed doing it, and probably could have done a lot more different options on this, but we always space is a little bit of a premium at times. But anyway, fun technique, fun little table.
What about the leg to rail joinery?
Yeah, leg to rail joinery is a little bit odd too, since you're actually coming in on the corner. You'll need a little bit of a cradle to kind of hold this. I mean, good photos and how-to in the magazine on this, but basically you're kind of cutting that flat spot on your dado set on the table saw, and then you can kind of use that same cradle to hold that, either if you've got a hollow chisel mortiser or your drill press, and you can square that up with a chisel after the fact, but it does create that flat facet on the 45. So instead of the legs going straight across, kind of a neat half lap in the middle look, and then kind of a lifted sort of look with those scallops on the ends of that. So just a fun little table. But I recommend try out that sock leg technique. It kind of was intimidating when I was kind of looking at that the first time, but it's not that hard. One of the things, a little tip, you know, when you're tapering these, we have a nice taper jig in there. It's based off of a center point dowel, so you're tapering and rotating, so it's pretty simple. But if you do get off just a little bit, I mean, a little hand plane work, you can make those corners match up perfectly. So don't be afraid of it. Give it a shot. Dave, you want to talk about tools, and then I'll wrap up. I want to do a little veneering at the end here, and then.
Okay. Now for the boring part, me. We did a tool test in this issue of benchtop router tables. We put 11 benchtop router tables head to head, and you know, it's one of those categories that a lot of times seems like a really big compromise to go to a small table. These were our top two. I'm going to bring up here. This is one from PowerTech, which is a company that's really been coming on strong here lately, and this one's from Craig. And I'll just show a couple features. What it really boiled down to with this was a lot of times a benchtop tool and a benchtop router table acts like a small table. And what we really looked at was which tables do you really not have to compromise on? Which ones act the most like a full-size router table? And that's what brought these two to the top. But there's some features, if you look at, you know, you don't have as much table area, obviously. So one of the challenges is being able to get to your insert plate. How much do you have, and how much do you have in front of your bit and behind your bit? It's always a compromise on a benchtop table, but these offer plenty of capacity for anything that you'd want to do. One of the big things on any router table is the adjustability and the locking of the fence. And some of the lower price models, that was really something that we saw was problematic, but some of them address it really well. And actually one of the things that made the Craig score really well was the way it locks. First of all, it's easy to remove. So if you want to get to your insert plate, you can. And then a lot of times you have to fumble, and they have little square slots, and you have to get a square nut back in there. This just drops in and slides into place. And what we really liked is these quarter turn locking levers. That's all it takes to lock it in place, and holds really well. The other tables have a similar type of setup. This one is also really easy to lift out. It does have just standard knobs and T-nuts, or T-bolts on this one, like toilet bolts. So it makes it a little bit more challenging to get it back in and line things up and get it going again. But nice quality fences. You know, insert plates are a big deal on a router table, and you never want to have an insert plate that can't be aligned. Actually, all the tables, even the least expensive home center models, had some way of leveling the insert plate. There were some sort of jack screws or set screws that you could use to level. Some better than others. We liked, again, the style that they have on these tables, where there are corner pieces that the plate rests on, and you can adjust the level of those at each corner. So if your plate's not perfectly flat, you can kind of crank it around. If you don't want to take your plate out often, you can just drop it in and add some screws that will hold down. One of the nice things, I never understood how, 3/8 by 9 1/4 by 11 3/4 became a standard size for a router table insert plate, because what's standard about that dimension. But one thing with these tables and some of the others, there's enough capacity and they're heavy duty enough, and the insert plate is sized so that if you want to drop a router lift in, you can. And you might think, oh, if I have a benchtop table, I don't need a router lift. But if you've got a table that's capable, it doesn't have to be a full-size table. Or if you're using this in other places, pull the lift out of your table, drop it in here, and you can use it in both places. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same brand as long as that insert plate is the same size. Another thing with insert plates is being able to mount the router. Especially if you're going to use guide bushings and do any template routing, you need to be able to center your router. Some tables leave you completely on your own for that. Both the PowerTech and this one have some centering rings on them, but they also have little divots that are cast in when they make the plate, and those are there in common router sub-base mounting patterns. So you just match up what one your router is and use those, drill the holes, and you can mount your router really easily. So I guess the bottom line, and there's always new tables coming onto the market. Of course, right after this article, we found out that, somebody just launched another table. We're going to get that one in and take a look at it. But there are times when a benchtop tool doesn't have to be a compromise necessarily. And so that's really what we looked at. Can you get full-size router table features in a compact size? And you can. You'll find 11 tables. We went through all the testing. We found them all to be flat, all to be, good in those regards as far as the fence squareness and the table flatness and all of those things. But what it really came down to is the ease of use, the features, and the capacity. And that's what brought these two up to the top. Another thing that we looked at that was a big deal on some of them is how much access you have underneath. Because if you've got your insert plate attached down, you need to be able to get underneath with your wrenches to, mount bits and tighten your collet. And some tables have really wide rails and really make it hard to reach in there with the wrenches. So again, we favored the ones that have good under table access. So just really all the basic stuff. How much can you fit on the table? How easily can you mount your router? How well can you adjust the fence? And what capacity workpieces can you hold? So
Very cool.
benchtop router tables.
Yeah.
So you like these the best?
These were the two. Yeah, they really, these tied for top tool. And sorry, the biggest difference, almost the exact same price. I would certainly go with either table. The PowerTech offers a couple things. It comes with a feather board, and it comes with a flip stop, which is nice. So, but yeah, there's some really good tables out there.
All right, thanks for bringing them by. We'll look them over real good here.
Yep.
And
No reason to take those back to the
Yeah.
tool lockup.
Yeah.
We'll take care of that for you.
we'll lighten your load.
Yeah.
And it's another great place. One of the things, by the way, I will say they call them benchtop router tables, and I'm not very tall, but putting these on a benchtop is a little high. But that's a place where the rolling tool stand, the transformable tool stand, is a perfect height for mounting a benchtop router table.
Yeah, you've probably seen me with my Train series.
Yeah.
I have that briefcase.
Your little briefcase benchtop
and
one, yeah.
it stands about right here, and it's perfect for
Yeah.
that little part work. You're not bent over all day. You can
Right. I mean,
get it up at a comfortable.
Yeah. A facial injury can't hurt me too much,
Yeah.
but I still don't want it right.
So we'll figure out how to lop about 3 inches off these legs, and
Lower the bench.
hey,
just
hey,
slightly.
don't no hurry there, Dave. No hurry there.
I'm getting off camera.
All right, so last project I want to talk about, and I don't know if you got stuff you want to talk about.
I've been done for a half an
Okay.
hour. Yeah.
Is the lamp we did in this issue. This was the one that appeared in the magazine, and this is a birch burl, very exotic Carillion birch burl from Norway, Finland.
No, Finland pre-NATO.
Finland prenatal. That's what John.
This doesn't grow on trees.
John bought this, and you used this in another project, and
I used it on a blanket
didn't you?
chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a lot left over, so I decided to use it for that. I did do another one, because I'm a big fan of the vertical grain fir. I love how that warm glow, but I did that as well. Any veneer really will work with this. The lighter veneers are going to have, you're going to have better luck with the translucence. And this has been many moon ago. I did a floor standing plant stand that I used some quilted exotics in, and it's still upstairs. I should have brought it down. But this is just kind of a smaller version of that, and I believe in that I used actual glass. This one we were attempting to use acrylic. So although when I went to buy acrylic, glass is cheaper than acrylic. So glass would work with this. So the cutting technique on glass, obviously in acrylic, going to be a little bit different, but I wanted to kind of just go through making one of these panels because I know this creates, veneer work just kind of creates a little bit of anxiety with people, and it shouldn't. I'm not using this. You don't need a vacuum bag. If you have one and you're experienced with that, great, that's fine, but you don't need a vacuum bag for this. And the thing about veneer, you know, if you mess something up, something goes terribly wrong, your expense is, it's not like I just bought, you know, $5,000 worth of white oak to build this piece of furniture and I messed something up. Yeah, that hurts. Veneer is extremely inexpensive and extremely accessible for exotics, things you would never even imagine building something out of. So it's an inexpensive way of creating something with just a really unique exotic look. And it doesn't have to be exotic from pre-NATO Finland. It can be Doug fir from the Northwest. Use your imaginations. There's lots of great veneer places out there. And if we didn't list them, just Google them. But I mean, a lot of great veneer places. You can get all kinds of cool stuff. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to go through this process of how I did this. I think we did a pretty good job of that in the magazine. But I also wanted to kind of cover some of the things that I like to do on how to cut veneer. And these might be a little unorthodox for you veneer experts out there. So, you know,
Lucas.
Let me have it. But what I have found, I own veneer saws. I own those things, and they do work. They work great. But what I have found is another use for the wonderful track saw that I have. And using a backer plate, you have zero clearance on both sides of the cut and can create incredibly good seams with that. If you don't have a track saw, you can certainly use a circular saw with a straight edge guide. And what turned me on to this is a project that I did probably, I would say 15 years ago, where I was laminating veneer, or edge-gluing the veneer that was over 7 feet long. So trying to get a cut 7 feet long and then truing that up with this veneer saw or a knife, you know, or any of these hand tools, you're talking about, you're putting yourself against all odds to get that seam straight up. But so that's where I first actually started using the track saw. And I'm just going to do a quick cut here. I'm not even going to measure, but I just kind of want to show you visually how slick this is. So I can make that cut. And Lucas, I don't know if you can zoom in tight enough to see this, but basically, just with a little hand pressure, I can push those veneers together, and do my taping or whatever I need to do. And never mind the blue tape. I know that there's people that want to use veneer tape, but I use blue tape. But you can get great seams with that. So if you don't have one of those, we're talking about small pieces. We're talking about, I think it finishes at somewhere between 6 and 12 or something like that, I think, with these. Obviously something very easy to do with straight edge. I like to use these thicker rulers, and I back them with some 150 or 120 grit sandpaper. So when you do get them to line up with your marks, the hand pressure obviously kind of helps get that from moving around, but that sandpaper also kind of adds a lot of extra grip, so you can come in and make your cuts. A lot of people don't own these saws. It's not the end of the world. One thing, maybe use a sharp blade.
You can change those?
These are inexpensive.
Oh.
Yeah. So one thing I will say is when you're cutting, and the burl obviously is a little bit harder to tell which direction grain direction is going, but when you're cutting with the grain, a knife works really well with a lot of woods. If you're dealing with woods that have, this is probably a bad example, but this is a good example. If you're dealing with woods with heavy grains like your oaks and ashes, the knife will sometimes want to follow those grain lines. So that's where it's important to use the straight edge. Make sure your knife stays on that. Cutting with the grain, it still can be a little bit of a challenge with the knife, but cutting across grain, so that's where it becomes a little bit more of a challenge, because that end grain, or as you're coming towards the end of the board, wants to tear out. And if all you're left with is a knife, I'm not going to mess this piece up. We'll try another one. And with burl, how do you tell what's long grain and end grain? So with a burl, if it bends real easy, that's long grain. End grain, or long grain doesn't bend so easy, right? So when you're cutting that across grain, all you have is a knife, when you're cutting, cut towards the middle, make a couple passes, and then use your ambidextrous left hand and cut back towards the middle. Okay, you're going to get a much better cut that way. If you're trying to cut clear across with that, what happens a lot of times is that end will tear out. I just broke that, but for your purposes of example, it will tear that out. So cut towards the middle if you're using just a knife. And I honestly, with the saw, sometimes I do the same thing. But that saw, it's just work yourself back and forth. These are very inexpensive, by the way. And just you're not trying to bear down on this. You're just taking your time. As you can see, why I really like the track saw. But you can get a nice cut with that too. Okay. So kind of several options for you. All right. So nerve-wracking part, but not so much. Gluing a piece of veneer to a piece of acrylic. I cut my acrylic, I've cut my veneer. We did talk a little bit about in the article, I think, about flattening veneer. This burl, a lot of burls are very bulbous and not flat at all. Highly recommend buying some veneer softener, and all that is a mixture of some witch's potion that miraculously flattens veneer. Makes it very, very pliable, and if you're doing veneering around curves or any sort of shapes like that, it makes the veneer very flexible. There's more information about that in the story, but this burl came out miraculously flat, so I was pretty impressed with that. But got your veneer. I've got a couple plates that I'm going to glue this between. I got my plexiglass. This is a key point of removing that paper or plastic that's on one side of the plexiglass or acrylic. I shouldn't use those two things synonymously because acrylic and plexiglass, they're different. So we used acrylic. I don't know what the difference is, but whatever.
We'll get a letter explaining.
We'll get a letter explaining that. Got a couple pieces of wax paper because I'm going to put those between my calls. And here's the thing. Have everything you need lined up right here, right front and center, so you don't have to wander off and go find something. So I'm using System 3 epoxy. This stuff is awesome. This is 5 minute, so it does set up fast. It's not panic. You got plenty of time, okay? So all we're doing is spreading veneer on one piece. I'm not trying to do all 4 pieces in the lamp at one time because I've only got one set of calls and a limited number of clamps. So it's 5 minute epoxy. I still let it sit in the forms for a half hour or so anyway, because it's just, I'm just being extra careful. So, about the amount of epoxy you're gonna need is I've drawn 2.5 inch circles on this board, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I've cut the tips off this already. So I got my resin and I got my hardener, and I'm gonna invert these. And starting in the middle of that circle, I'm squeezing the same for both of them until those circles fill up, and then stop. Okay? Very scientific. And then I'm mixing epoxy. Got my little scrap stick here. Make sure you get it folded in good.
Like Bob Ross.
Yeah, happy little epoxy. I'll probably get sued for that.
Yep.
They can't even find his old paintings back, so
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. All right, so it doesn't take a whole lot to get that done. Piece of scrap, your wife's credit card, whatever you want to use.
New ones in the mail.
New ones in the mail. So all I'm doing is just kind of globbing this on here, and I'm not going to put all that on here right off the bat, okay? Just because I said draw an 1.5 inch circle, fill it full 1.5 inch, put it on here. All I'm looking for, guys, is a nice thin film on this plexiglass, and you're just kind of moving it to the edges, and make sure, critical, you cover every square inch of this, and I mean up to the edge, okay? I don't want it running over the edge, but as you can see, I don't know how hard that is to see in the camera, but I'm just working that pool to the edges, and you can see the shiny of the epoxy and the acrylic where it hasn't reached. So it's pretty evident if you kind of hold it to the light at an angle. So I get one side kind of where I want it, and you can see it. If I'm pulling that card across there, you know, I'm not pressing down real hard. I'm just using it as a screed. I pick up quite a bit of epoxy just pulling that across there, okay? Also, I didn't have to really apply more epoxy to it. I still have some here that I can use to fix John's stuff later. So I can work that to these corners and this end. This is a guide. That's not the Holy Grail, guys. So you're just trying to get this covered. And the reason why is if you're taking this veneer, and I'm hoping you're not going to put a stain on it because you're using the veneer to let light through. You put too much, you're going to get some bleed through. Not the end of the world if you're using a clear finish. It probably won't show up anyway. And I'll show you what I did earlier today anyway, here in a minute. But so I've got that really, I think, pretty much where it needs to be. Oh, were you cutting dovetails earlier?
No.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
So anyway, wax paper down. Grab my piece of veneer. And I cut these pretty close to the size of each other, so I didn't have to have a whole lot of overhang. But you know, honestly, it's okay to cut your veneer a little bit long, or a little bit wide. You can easily sand that off. I'm just kind of bedding it down in there. The good news about epoxy as opposed to when you're trying to glue two boards together with a bunch of regular glue is when you first clamp them, they kind of want to shift apart. The epoxy behaves a little bit nicer for you. So, so then it's just a matter of clamping that up. I am applying light pressure at first with these clamps. Even though I said it doesn't shift, it might, so don't get too hairy-armed with it at the beginning. And I don't know how tight Lucas is on this, but your calls probably need to be a little bit bigger than this. So if we were calling for 6 1/4 or whatever it was, maybe go for it and use like 6.5 or 6 3/4 inch wide, or and that's that. So it is 5-minute epoxy, but you may want to wait maybe a half hour or so just to make sure it's going to come out of the forms, out of that form, probably still a little damp anyway. So just let it rest. So this was the one I did earlier today, and the reason why I was telling you guys, don't use the amount of epoxy you need as opposed to just using everything you mix. I know the habit is we're running around the shop looking for things you can glue or whatever it is, but can't let that epoxy go to waste. But you can kind of see on this where there's some darker areas. Is that picking that up? Mm-hmm. That's bleed through. So if I was to put a clear finish on this, probably would disappear for the most part. But if I was going to try to stain this or use a dye, it's not going to sink into that because I've completely impregnated that veneer with epoxy. So that's why just less is more. But this is a great experiment because obviously if you finish it clear, that will pretty much disappear. So fun little project. And on a scale of where you're able to control kind of what you're doing as far as the amount of epoxy you're having to spread, you know, the time you have from putting the glue on and clamping, you've got plenty of time to make adjustments and just give it a shot. Obviously, you can make this any size you want. We did address it in the article, but basically the key to kind of tuning up these edges. I just used sanding blocks. I think I started with maybe, I don't remember what it was, 120, maybe 100. And you're just basically sanding those edges. As you go through the grits, you're just kind of starting to polish that. And this is one of my kind of the things that I didn't know was going to happen on this. You design these things in black and white, and you don't really know until the end kind of how this is going to turn out. But the acrylic on the edge, after you polish that acrylic, how that light kind of starts to create yet another dimension on those lamps. So the finer you polish that, obviously the more clear that can get. So at some point you might want to stop at about 1500 grit or so. But yeah, so anyway, fun issue, some fun projects.
Are we going to talk about the wiring?
No.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead and go into that.
Well, gotta go.
John's a licensed electrician.
Am I not?
Yeah. Yeah, we follow your local codes, and if you're not sure about wiring this lamp, then have someone do it for you. It's a 2-wire. This is just a 2-wire socket, so that's as far down that road as I'm going.
We use the LED bulb to keep it a little cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, almost anything nowadays, you know, you can still find, I mean, I'm unscrewing this bulb right now. Oh, I shot myself. Just kidding. Any of these bulbs nowadays, as long as you're not touching the metal part, I mean, they get warm, but I mean, you couldn't do this with a bulb, an incandescent bulb years ago. So their LED bulbs are great. They keep cool. Obviously, this is vented. Yeah, thanks for turning that off now.
Well, you saw how concerned I was before.
Yeah, I see. But yeah, so obviously there's you're not wanting to stick a 150 watt barn light in there, but nice little accent light. Anything else? No? Subscribe to the magazine. Yep. Like our websites. Plans are woodmagazine.net. You can find,
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
And John's Twitter handle is,
we're gonna run through. Yeah, I'll post Kevin's cell number in the comments below.
I lost that.
Oh, okay. Oh, and I owe you $1 because you survived, so I'll get you with that effort. You can always write to the magazine, woodmail@woodmagazine.com. That's the good general one to send stuff to. Also the great place to send if you want to submit your shop. If you have shop tips, go to shoptips@woodmagazine.com. If you want to find all the stuff and essentially 40 years of content and all the things that we have online, go to woodmagazine.com. And if you want to be able to buy project plans or look at our free project plans, etc., go to woodstore.net. Links down there. That's the magic of how YouTube works, right? We type it and it's there. But yeah, reach out. We always want to hear from people. We do hear from people. We love it when we get to realize that we were right. That's our most pleasurable thing, but we'll even accept when we were wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, it's...
if you got project ideas, shop
Yeah.
tips, send them along.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'd love to get them in the magazine.
Remember when we glued all Nate's pens together?